All right, let's go. Let's go. Hui, 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 hui. Oh, long hike today. Helping out the nephews with their game, getting all the credits, walking around, spinning all the spinners. Motherfucker. Um, what did we did? Oh yeah, we did a big sandwich. Did a big like deli sandwich, homemade for dinner. Yeah, it was good. It was good. What was the point there? I did this big sandwich. I was gonna tie it in. Didn't end up getting to do a lot of Ori. As I think I got in kind of late for my walk because I did like basically a double length walk, um, which is good. I'm surprised how quickly I'm coming around. There was some point during this where they're like 6 weeks to recover from surgery, and we're on week like 8, and I was like kind of struggling to do. I mean, early on, I was struggling to do like a walk that was nothing, and then I was like pushing to do 3 mile walks. And I was doing 3 mile walks with a secondary 2 mile walk broken up across the day, and then now I did like an over a 5 mile walk, and was like, I want to do another walk. Not really. Like part of the point was like if I could do this big long walk, I could come home and just like relax for the rest of the evening. Uh, but if I'm not sure what they meant by 6 weeks to recover. If it was 6 weeks and then you can start recovering, or like 6 weeks and you're at like a weird baseline. I don't know quite what they meant. I'm really impressed with some of the results I'm seeing with the new workout, which makes these conversations technically going to be like a lot shorter, at least through Monday. See if the routine changes up. Um, I started writing down. So this is probably like we're what like 52 episodes in or something. I caught like a little bit of a second wind, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you're out there going through this like I am, and you hit a point where you're like, this isn't quite where I wanted to be, and no one's understanding that, or like you don't feel like you can communicate it, or they're not listening, or whatever the difficulty is, where you're like, I could have been. Am I less far or more far than I want to be? Uh, I ran into this because I was like, well, I'm having these pains. Are these pains here or there? Are these pains things that were like coming along anyway, and the injury, like accelerated injury and surgery, like accelerated it? A lot of weird, like, who's really to blame here? It's a car with a lot of mileage on it, and then we also got a flat tire, and the flat tire blew the axle or something complicated like that. So I was incredibly angry, wanted it to be just the fault of the surgery and things like that. I was like, I don't see how it isn't this thing, um, the surgery and the recovery and the PT and complications and things. Uh, and I did the smart thing I do anymore, which is calm down, let some time pass, think about it, make sure it's really what you want. Because in the moment, I'm like, you motherfuckers, you know. It wasn't even like a violent like you motherfuckers, but it was definitely like all the I could only see negatives. I was there not scheduling appointments because we're done. This is all done. We're not going to get this fixed. This is just how things are going to be, and shit like that. And that wasn't true. So hopefully that won't be true for anybody who's having a difficulty at some point in their PT where they feel like lingering issues aren't getting addressed or something like that. What I started doing was get around to the fucking point. Uh, I opened up a notepad app on my phone, and I wrote down everything I could just think about. I just wrote things I was thinking about, the aches and pains I was having, and then I left that app open. And then every time I opened my phone and needed to switch apps, I would see the uh, note there and be reminded, oh, write down what I'm thinking about with my note. And, you know, how much do you fucking look at your phones anymore these days, you know? Like, even if you're not actively using it, you end up having to check it for like a message or some sort of bleep bloop. So if you're not like a big phone user and you're like, how am I going to fucking apply this to me? Like, I don't use my phone. You could set a reminder every few hours to just go like an alarm on your phone. And the point being, uh, every time I saw that, I would write down stuff about the pain and why I was having it, what was happening when I did it, blah 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 blah. And the more I did that, the more I was like, oh, it like okay, I just woke up and it kind of aches, and I'm checking my messages, and oh, I should write down that it aches. I should think about it, and then even if I didn't open up the Notepad app and start writing down the exact thing I was thinking, I at least was thinking about it more, and I was thinking about how my therapist said, oh, this looks like scapular dyskinesia, and I looked up a very long, great paper about it that was uh, very in depth, and you know, I had to stop and look up, you know, all kinds of crap constantly while reading it. And it was going into like how your scapula works and shit, so it was very in depth. And it was also very much like talking about like how do you position, how do you sit, you know, and it made me like think about my positioning and my posture, and oh, like, oh, while I'm recording a lot of things, I like lean on this right arm like comfortably, and so that arm is like stressing a lot more, and then I noticed that I carry it in a certain way once that stress has hit a certain level. uh, so it was like, oh, okay, it's not just, it's like really complicated. Like that arm got hurt, I started babying it, started doing a lot of things about it. I'm not back into like confidently using it again. And so when I'm doing that, like right now, I'm not getting like clicks and stuff anywhere near the pain where I'm like, yes, use the muscles, don't be scared. It's wild. It's a wild thing. Thinking about it has made me feel better. Thinking about it has made me write better. Writing about it has made me think about it more. It's a nice little circle of side effects. So I would say anybody who maybe it would be like a really good habit early on. Like I wish I could go back. You know, I'll go back and put like a link to like this episode in like the early episodes and be like, hey, if you're going through this and you're like a gamer or an older guy, uh, jump to this episode and read about taking notes. And maybe you just aren't a phone guy. Maybe you're gonna buy a little red notepad, like start taking notes in the pad. This is interesting confidence. Like I just probably wouldn't have behaved like this even a day ago. Um, Doing these exercises, I would be doing a push up on a wall, taking my arm, just the shoulders. We'll do 20 of 5. I find that even just doing them standing like this, like I do when I was walking and things like that, it's really just engaging a lot of these muscles that I wasn't using. Your scapula is like up here, reaching down through to your shoulder blade. Um, and so doing this like activates a lot of the smaller muscles around the scapula. And dyskinesia isn't necessarily that my scapula is like weak or can't like lift a lot, but it could be that it gets like tired easily. It can be like hyper. It's hyper. There's hyper and hypoatrophy, and it's like you can have a muscle that can like strongly activate like one time and then gets really tired afterwards. And I think I was having something like that. It was, who knows where it was coming from, but definitely after the surgery, I was experiencing like a lot of the side effects of it. I think that's about 20. And so I'm like, ooh, like there's a good amount of tiredness here, not as much here. So there is something going on here. And oh, that scapula goes down and it pulls up, and I read that long article, and I go, oh, okay, these things are all interconnected. And it was like, oh, you get this radial pain because this thing isn't activating, and then this is trying to compensate for like this thing not activating. It's like, You should lift your arm, not like have your arm like try to lift itself. I was just developing a lot of weird like behaviors. I would experience sort of the aches and pains of it in the PT doing some of the most challenging exercises, which were to like lay on your face and put your arms up behind you and then put them at your side and up behind you. Incredibly difficult things to do with weights, like more than like 10 to 20 times. And we're doing them like 10 and 10 and 10 and like over and over with increasing weights. And I was like, I could do it like 10 times at the most. And when I was supposed to do like more and more reps, it was, it was very intense. So understanding all that better and just writing the shit down really got me in like a positive feedback loop, because I was struggling to explain myself to the therapist. We'd always communicated well, but I think it was, I don't want to put any shade on the therapist, but I think it was a lot on my side. I was like taking a lot of the work of the communication in on my side. And it wasn't like they weren't listening. They were listening and hearing words and then like quickly jumping to conclusions that they're supposed to. I think they're often tasked in that way, like, why does my shoulder hurt? I'm like, this one of there was like a list of like 10 questions not to ask your physical therapist, and like that was one of the only ones on there that I had asked them, which was like, why this? And they're like, they have to do a bunch of work and figure it out, and then even then they'll be like, oh, that's like the problem, but the underlying problem, the thing causing the problem to happen, is this other thing where you're a little deficient. A lot of like difficulties there. So my advice, what worked for me was keeping journal. I used my phone, and I've just written down a ton of notes. I'm going to go to her and try to like spew all those notes out on Monday and see if anything in there like really helps. I can pull the notes up real fast here. Just had it titled pain. I looked up what kinds of pains: achy, burning. There was something like 7 kinds of pain. I'd heard there was 5, so I used that. The pain is like an ache in the morning and more of a burn in the evening, especially after any exertion. I would get these little minor muscle spasms I've totally forgotten to like ask her about, because they like happen and they don't hurt. They're just these little blah, 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 like whatever. Doing my walking makes my like upper bicep more tired, achy. The lower bicep pain, it keeps coming up at random every time. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. This is what I was doing when I was doing it. I think my forearm pain may be from like catching up on work and doing like manipulating controller for videos. That's definitely better than it was at week 3 or 4, where I was like really concerned about it. It's still there, and that worries me, but I think that it is improved in that it doesn't show up as readily. And so I think truly a problem of like having surgery done on this arm, and there's just this web of muscles that everything started compensating, and it just got to get more used to using the arm instead of just the forearm. I think my forearm became like compensating after having the tendon cut. So I looked up pain numbers. It's never higher than a 5 or a 6, which 5 or 6 is like things that like distract you from what you're doing. It's not very distracting. It's more of a 3 or a 4 at the worst. Like when it's like, ooh, that's got my attention. I notice when I wake up, I have a lot of like pop, but I think that's more normal. It's just that now I'm like in tune listening to all this. I sometimes wake up like pop. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Now I'm like, every pop means something, But those pops only happen one time, so I'm pretty sure they're just from me being sedentary and sleeping. I'm probably gonna bring a controller in and just like show her like, I sit like this, and she's gonna be like, oh God, you're slumping all over, you're killing yourself, It's a bunch of things that's like death of the self. You're gonna have to do these things, and then you'll be reborn better. But it can be scary. I remember thinking like, I don't want to tell her about like I'm playing video games. I just don't want to. I don't want to deal with the stigma. I don't want to deal with any of it. Trust them. All right, I'm gonna cut this off now. I don't want it to go more than 15 minutes. So take notes, write them down. It helps. Okay, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.